Well, for his thoughts on all this, we're now joined by Daniel Bilak, a Ukrainian-Canadian lawyer who has fought on the front lines in Ukraine. Daniel, good to see you again. Thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here.
Listen, I want to begin first and foremost with your reaction to what we saw between Donald Trump and President Zelenskyy today.
Yeah, it wasn't a good look on either of them, I think. I think there's a lot of undercurrent of emotion in both men. There's a bit of a history. I think the magnitude of the moment may have caught up to them as well. But I'm hopeful that both are going to continue to see the larger picture in all of this, and the importance of signing the minerals agreement and of working towards a peace arrangement. I found the post that or tweet that President Trump issued right after this meeting frankly wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be, and sort of left the door open. So I think that there, it just shows also how important the entire issue of security agreements and guarantees are to not just to President Zelenskyy, but to the Ukrainian people. We understand very clearly that you cannot trust Vladimir Putin's word on anything. I mean, if his lips are moving, he's lying, and that if there are going to be any American or other companies coming in to partner with Ukraine on exploiting our mineral resources, business isn't going to come in unless there's a guarantee that they're not going to get bombed, and or that the Russians aren't going to invade and take all this away from them. So I think those guarantees are just as important for the United States at this stage and for President Trump as they are for Ukraine. Yeah. And I think that they'll have to have some sort of arrangement that they'll come up with, perhaps with our European allies as well.
Yeah, well, and that's yet to be seen, though, because, of course, the Ukrainian delegation was told to leave the White House after that exchange, so no deal has been signed yet. We'll have to see where that goes. But, how troubling is that exchange, though, given that the United States is now negotiating an end to the war with Russia and without Ukraine at the table?
Well, I mean, these are early days in the negotiation as well. I mean, there's still talks about talks more than anything else. I think part of them are already, the Americans are trying to feel out what their bilateral relationship with Russia can be. It's clear that you cannot have any final arrangement without Ukraine at the table, and probably the European allies at the table. So, it's early days for the administration. They're still finding their footing. 1 month into a term, into an administration's term, is not a long time. Still don't have all their people in place. A lot of stuff seems to be being made up as it goes along. We've seen inconsistencies in messaging and changes in direction and in rhetoric over matters. So I think that, somebody once said that, the problem is that people take Donald Trump literally instead of seriously, where you need to be taking him seriously, but not literally. And we've seen him backtrack on some of his earlier comments. It's all part of his particular and peculiar style of negotiation, and I think it's too early to jump to conclusions. I mean, we really have to hope that this spat today can be fixed, and they kiss and make up, and then we get the mineral deal signed, and we get that process back on track, because that's Ukraine's path to the table, actually. Mm-hmm. And if the American economic interests are aligned with Ukraine's economic interests, then that could be a powerful stimulus.
Okay, Dmitry Medvedev is a name that former president and prime minister of Russia, and I'm going to read to you a social media post that he shared this afternoon after the exchange, and this is what he wrote: "The insolent pig," referring to Zelenskyy, finally got a proper slapdown in the Oval Office, and Donald Trump is right. The Kyiv regime is gambling with World War III. What do you say to that?
Well, he's also the alcoholic in chief in the Kremlin. But leaving that aside, his job is to lay out really outlandish and bombastic statements. It also points to the fact that, frankly, some of President Trump's comments do reflect comments that he's heard from the Russians, and I think that sets President Zelenskyy off. I think that's a trigger for him, and it's understandable why that is so. To the extent that the Russians are influencing White House behavior and thinking, I think it's far too early to draw definitive conclusions. Would we like to see this being dealt with in more conventional ways? Perhaps. But I can tell you that the conventional ways of doing things under the Biden administration wasn't working out for us that well. I mean, we were getting basically a drip down effect, drip line effect of weapons deliveries. That drip feed basically was killing us. We were always getting enough to survive, but never enough to win. With Donald Trump, there's a lot of uncertainty, but I think the Ukrainian people probably feel that there's probably more hope, ironically enough, and that reflects the particularly difficult circumstances in which we find ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Does that mean that Donald Trump is right when he says the Ukrainian people are losing faith in Zelenskyy?
Well, I think that any president 3 years into a war, his ratings are going to be affected because people have suffered a great degree. People want things over. But the last poll that took place, which from my sense is accurate, showed him with 57% of the people supporting him across the country, and that's more than a buoyant result to continue to move forward. Had I been President Zelenskyy, I probably would not have responded at all to what Vice President Vance was saying, and that probably would have wrapped up the press conference. But it's a trigger for him, and Putin is Satan, and we have suffered tremendous atrocities from murders, rapes, whole cities being reduced to rubble, displacement of millions, tens of millions of people. Ukrainians have suffered tremendously, and the pressure that President Zelenskyy has as the leader of that nation, working 24/7 for 3 years, has got to be just heroically and Herculean in terms of its weight on his shoulders.
Daniel Bilak, always appreciate the time with you. Thank you for this today.
Thank you. God bless. Thanks to the people of Canada for your support.